Hey guys, welcome back. So now we're getting back into the Miles Morales clone saga with part 3, and man, like this one's taking a twist. So with that being said, let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get your spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so jumping right back into where Miles has found Selim and the other clones' hideout, and with doing so, Miles had found all the equipment that they had stole, so he destroyed all of it, under the assumption that they were plotting something evil. But with Selim and the others getting back, they then subdue Miles, only for Miles to find out that they were working on a solution so that unlike the clones that had came before them, these guys wouldn't suffer such a short lifespan. But while they had Miles here webbed up and just ready for Mind Spinner to do his worst, and it's here where Selim expresses to Miles that he's more or less impressed, because Miles had the guts to destroy Selim and his brother's only way of surviving. And when Selim says this, it kinda gives us a peek into his way of thinking, which we'll get into a bit more soon. But what I'll say for now is that it's heavily based on what these guys were designed for, and it's like you take that and you just stack it on top of Miles's DNA. But with Miles destroying their equipment and essentially dooming them, Selim tells Miles like, okay, you're capable of being ruthless because you destroyed our only solution to finding a way to continue to live. But of course for Miles, he don't know what this guy talking about. And all he really knows is that these guys are clones. And clones of him obviously, cause they look just like him. And it then kind of gives us this moment to where Shift, he leans over to Selim and he tells him like, well, he says glurp, but what he means is, okay, maybe Miles is telling the truth and he really doesn't know. Which is more or less the translation, because we kind of got like a I am Groot thing going on with this guy. But then it's here where Selim kind of fills in Miles on most of the stuff that we know thus far, but he also goes a bit deeper into the explanation here. Because it's here where he tells Miles that they are clones, but they're more so modified versions of him. And like we'd seen before, there's some that will last a few hours, some 24 hours, and some for a number of days, but ultimately they all have this short window of life. And recently Selim had found a solution for the 3 of them, but Miles came through, wrecked all of that, and now they're back to square one. But at this point now, with Miles at least understanding what they were trying to do, he now gets why they were stealing the equipment and why they kidnapped the scientist. And then Miles was kind of like, oh yeah, the scientist, what y'all do with him? And Selim answers like, yeah, he dead. He floating in the river with your fingerprints around his throat. But with hearing this, Miles tells them like, you don't have to do this, like I can help you guys. And immediately when he says that, like Mind Spinner then hits him with the mind spinning, because neither him or Selim believe Miles about getting them help, whether if Miles can or if he really wants to, because once again he's kind of dealing with himself. And with doing that, like at this point 2 out of 3 says that he's lying, because even still, Shift, he believes that there's a possibility that Miles could be telling the truth and that he does want to help them. But Selim doesn't even want to chance that, because he still believes that Miles' actions were with intention, but also that Miles claiming to help them is only a trick to get them locked up. And Selim doesn't want to spend the last days of his life sitting away in some cell. But with Miles hanging here and just hearing the whole conversation, he then tells Selim like, hey, if you guys are gonna torture me, do what you're gonna do, because I've had worse. And when Miles says this, Selim tells him like, when you say worst, I'm pretty sure you're talking about the Assessor, who for Selim and his brothers, the Assessor was the closest thing they had to a father. But then also referring back to all the rigorous testing that Miles had been through, the Assessor also put these guys through it too. But in their case, they had to go through all of this as children, which for them was a different childhood concept, quote unquote, in comparison to Miles. And not just because they were trained to be weapons, but both their childhood and their training was compressed in order to produce a more capable clone in a shorter amount of time. But real quick, like as far as like the details and background of the Assessor, like we really don't know a whole lot. Because as far as his background, Selim does mention that the Assessor, he's not like a man, and he describes him as an evil algorithm or exploitation given life, and that he's also a part of something beyond Miles's understanding. But even with him saying that, I feel like it's something we still haven't got like the full gist of like just yet, because even when we go over to Iron Man Annual Issue 1 from 2020, when at the time Miles told Tony like everything that happened, as far as Miles being taken by the Assessor and all the over-the-top testing and the Assessor threatening his family. And when Miles told all of this to Tony, Tony went off, and he was pretty much just like, tell me everything you know about this guy. But with this happening, like before you know it, Tony found out where this dude was at, as far as like where he was based in Brooklyn, and Tony went off. Like all you heard was you know them Iron Man sounds. But with Tony storming this place, he shuts down the Assessor's operations here. And with doing so, Tony then downloads the Assessor's consciousness into his suit. But even with this happening at the time, we had also seen the Assessor restart from a backup at a different location. So not only does Tony currently have a copy of this guy, but there's also still this backup of the Assessor, who's still out there somewhere, continuing his works with the likes of like Quantum, who's powered by the Space Stone, and who knows where that's going. But as far as Selim telling the story here, he also mentions how his brothers Mind Spinner and Shift, how the two of them had it worse than him, with Mind Spinner nearly being killed just so the Assessor could bring out his sonic abilities, and as far as Shift, he was considered to be a failure until the Assessor realized different ways that he could use Shift and harness his abilities. But for all of them, their age was artificially accelerated in order to speed up the process, and because of that, years of their life were then only compressed down to like weeks. But also for them, after they had been brought up to their current age, when they accumulated the strength and skill, these three had came together and they had taken their opportunity to escape from the Assessor. But with hearing this, Miles, he's glad that they had got away at least. And it's here where Miles tells him like, man, like let me help you guys. And with hearing this, Selim, like he quotes the Art of War and he tells Miles that he recognizes that this is just a trick and he's not gonna fall for it. And that's kind of the thing here with Selim, because as he was developed, he showed to be good with knives and he showed intelligence, and because of that, he's always in this warrior slash interrogation slash gotta kill somebody mind state. And it's pretty different than Shift and Mind Spinner, because with Shift, he shows more compassion with him nearly being discarded, and when he lashes out, it's more so an expression of frustration. And Mind Spinner, like just to describe these guys a little bit, he's kind of like Shift as well, but for him, instead of building compassion because of what he went through, he just kind of likes to torture people too. But then it's here where Selim makes a statement like, even though the three of them are dead men walking, they still have time to hurt the people who hurt them. And before he leaves, Miles asks him like, where's he going? And it's there where Selim tells him that he's going to the hospital where their mother works, and he's going to bring her back here to kill her in front of Miles. And when I seen this, I was like, man, like, does this guy not know what happened in the 1610? Like, we can't have that. But while Selim leaves with Mind Spinner, Miles is then left here with Shift, which to me kind of felt like intentional leaving Shift here. And you guys let me know what you think down in the comments. But with Miles being here left alone with Shift, he tries to appeal to more of his compassionate side, because once again, like at its core, he's talking to a version of himself. But while he's reasoning with him, he knows that the webbing is getting weaker with time, so that Shift doesn't have to necessarily let him out, though it would help tremendously. But if he doesn't help him, and it eventually comes to the point where Miles breaks himself out, Miles wants to at least come to the understanding with this guy that he needs to go save his mother, who Selim had referred to as our mother. And because of that, Miles knows that there's a part somewhere in them, like there's a part of them on the inside that just knows that this isn't right. So Miles wants to at least have the understanding with Shift that as soon as Miles is free, that Shift won't try to stop him. And when Miles breaks himself out, like as he leaves, he tells Shift, he gives him his word that he'll find a way to make him better. And so when Miles gets to the hospital, like the real Miles, of course when he arrives they think he's one of the clones, and when Miles gets there, like the old security guard, and bless his heart, like he tries to stop Miles, but then he's not able to do much because his knee goes out and he like catches a case of maximum cartilage, or minimum cartilage better yet. But also here at the hospital we also find Mind Spinner, and when Miles' mother sees him, she pretty much put together that he's there for her and that this has something to do with her son Miles, and because of that she then approaches Mind Spinner while giving everyone else the opportunity to get away. But also at this point with Miles being there, like he jumps between Mind Spinner and his mom, and immediately Mind Spinner tries to hit him with like the sonic or psionic mind blast. But at this point with Miles being hit with it so many times, he tells Mind Spinner that he's gotten used to the pain. But with Miles going against Mind Spinner, he tries to reason with him much like he did with Shift. But of course, like we've seen, Mind Spinner can't really talk, and also Miles' mom is getting her hits in too. But then it's here, unlike before with Mind Spinner, where he's able to get 2 words out, and those 2 words will kill you, which immediately let Miles know that this guy isn't trying to reason. And for that reason, he hits Mind Spinner with the Venom Blast, which prior to this point has kind of been hit and miss with some of the clones, but fortunately in this case, it was enough to take Mind Spinner down. But then it's here when Miles is talking to his mom, and she mentions that the normal looking one, Selim, he had been at the hospital earlier, but not long after he had got to the hospital with Mind Spinner, Selim had left, with him originally just coming to the hospital to act like he was Miles. And it's here where Miles and his mom, they then realize that because Selim knows who Miles is, there's only one place he could have gone. And from there we see Selim arrive at Miles' home with Miles' dad and his little sister Billy. And when this happens, right away we see Selim tell Miles' dad like something crazy's going on at the hospital and that mom's okay, but these people are looking for him and they're gonna come to the house for him next. And with saying this, Selim is like, give me Billy, I know where to take her so she'll be safe, and Dad just hands her over, not being aware about Selim or really anything that Genki and Miles have figured out up to this point. But I also kind of feel like he should have had some kind of suspicion, for one, just from the news that he showed Miles back in issue 25, but even with seeing that, he still wasn't aware of Selim or any of the clones that had recently popped up. But yeah, like with this happening now, the stakes have just gone through the roof. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here, who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below to where you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.